Hi, and welcome to the Hotline, your online hotline, direct line to the women-only attorneys at Hofheimer Family Law. My name is Katie Carter, and I'm so glad you're here. I'm a family law attorney from Hofheimer Family Law, a Virginia-based family law firm representing women exclusively in divorce, custody, and support. And I'm here today with Caitlin Walters, who, like I said in our last episode, I practiced with for over 10 years now. Which
I
is a lot. I
can't.
know we look too young. I know we do.
We were babies when we started
We were
practicing law,
babies,
right?
and there are
That's what they tell us.
filters. There are filters.
And
Um,
makeup, great
yeah,
makeup.
yeah. Things have changed a little bit ago since the early days. We just talked a little while ago about custody arrangements, and specifically, because Caitlin is just recently back from maternity leave, so I think she's in I mean, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I think you're in a position to be a little bit extra empathetic to a mom who's about to undergo some big transitions as far
Oh,
as
for
custody
sure.
arrangement and the amount of time she gets to spend with her kids.
Hmm.
So today I wanted to talk, to kind of branch off of that topic and talk a little bit more about modification. And just first, before we get started, to like recap, Caitlin, for anyone who didn't check out our last podcast, how does what is appropriate for different aged kids change and evolve over time, especially in terms of custody arrangements, either by agreement or as ordered by the judge?
Yeah. So I think in general, there is more of a trend these days with judges and the legal community to try to find as much of a shared physical custody arrangement as we can. Again, when it is appropriate, we're not indicating cases where we maybe have addiction issues, mental health issues, abuse issues going on when we've got two relatively healthy, normal parents. Of course, he's probably a horrible
Relatively,
person,
yeah.
but yeah,
Oh, totally
we
horrible.
use the
He's
word
totally
relative.
horrible. We hate him.
Totally horrible. Yes. But there just seems to be that trend. Now, I will say younger kids, I do think it is easier for us to get more of that straight 50-50. So maybe a week on, week off. Week's a long time to go without seeing your kids. So maybe we do, one parent has Monday, Tuesday, next parent has Wednesday, Thursday, alternate Friday to Sunday. But it's a little bit easier to do that when we're not concerned about disrupting school. Once you do get children who are in school, especially the older that they become, I think that's where we may see a separate schedule for school year versus summer, where maybe we try to give the non-primary custodial parent an extended every other weekend, maybe a Thursday to a Monday, something to that effect, and then get more of that 50-50 arrangement during the summer when we're not concerned about impacting school. I think also older children, we also have to be concerned about extracurricular activities and friend activities that they want to do. So there's just, I think, a lot more external considerations that come into play when we have older children that we're looking at as far as custody arrangements.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's always important to keep in mind that custody and visitation is a long game. It's not something that you establish when they're young and then you just, I mean, I guess you could keep up with it all
Right,
the way
right.
through,
But
but, the best interest of the child isn't something that's fixed
mhm,
at some point in time and it never changes. It's static, it's evolving, and it's designed to change with your kids. So,
right.
as a lead into my next question, what should you do, Caitlin, if and maybe when the custody and visitation
Yeah.
arrangement that you have stops working for your family?
So the very first thing you're going to want to do is meet with an attorney. And I know, people probably get tired of hearing attorneys say that, but there is a reason we do. There is a different analysis that needs to go into play when we are looking to change a custody and visitation schedule. So, as we've said multiple times in our podcast about custody and visitation, that we are looking at the best interest of the child. There's a list of factors that we take into consideration that the court looks at when trying to determine a custody and visitation schedule. Now, those best interest factors will eventually come into play when we're modifying custody and visitation. But the first thing that we need to be able to convince a court is that there has been a material change in circumstances that affects the children. So you want to make sure that you've met with an attorney to talk about here's what's going on, here's what life was like when this was originally set, here are the changes that have happened, and here is how it is impacting my children. Because if we don't have that material change, the court technically doesn't have the authority to change anything. Now, question I always get is, well, what is a material change? And the short answer to that is it depends. There
It's a
is
good
not,
question.
yeah, there is not a set definition of a material change in circumstances. It's one of those, you know it when you see it. And so again, that's why you want to come in, you want to talk to an attorney early on, so that you can think about the things that you may need to start doing before you even involve a court or involve the other parent in a discussion about changing things. So that would be my advice. If it seems as though your custody and visitation schedule is not working, make an appointment as soon as you can to talk to a custody attorney to get those ins and outs so that you can make sure that you start from the very beginning setting up the case the way that you need to.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would point out too, like it's not just a question of what the change is. It's not just, oh, there was a new baby, there was a move, there's new schools, what, whatever the case may be. Those are all things that may very well be material changes in circumstances, but it's a question of how have the changes impacted the child? To what degree is this child
Mhm.
impacted? It kind of goes back to that best interest of the child thing. It's not just externally what's going on. It's exactly how are these changes impacting this child and making the custody arrangement as it exists no longer appropriate, and then
Right.
what do we do to fix that? So it's
Yes.
it's kind of complicated in the sense that there's no specific answer, but I think that if you're noticing a change, especially a big change, there's remarriages and new babies and moves and schools and all sorts of things that happen to children and just everyday life. If you're seeing these changes and you're seeing changes in the children and you're feeling like this maybe used to work or maybe it never worked, but it really isn't working now, like there's all these things that
Mhm.
just are factoring in here and are making this hard, then that's a pretty good sign that you've got a material change in circumstances and a good indicator that you should come in and talk to an attorney about it.
Right.
At least that's kind of like how I tend to look at it.
Mhm.
I have a sad question for you, Caitlin, but I mean, it happens a lot. I mean, I know I see it a lot. I'm sure you do too. Under Virginia law, child support is tied to how much parenting time a parent has. So
Mhm.
we do find, especially, recently, that even parents who maybe weren't involved prior to the separation, the divorce, or the breakup are arguing for more time, maybe at an initial determination, and then they continue to make attempts to modify the existing custody order to get more parenting time in order to lower their child support. So
Mhm.
if you have a mother whose child's father is threatening to take her to court for more to get more time with the child, what advice would you give her? What would you say?
The first thing I would say is take a deep breath. Just because he is asking for more time does not necessarily mean that he is going to get it. And
Yeah.
it's court is a scary thing, and nobody wants to go to court. I'm sure. Even most lawyers don't want to go to court. It's not our favorite
It's a
thing in the
means
world.
to an end,
Yes,
not
yes.
a
So
day at the country club.
right, exactly, which would be much more enjoyable.
Yeah.
So just take a deep breath and then really sit down and start thinking through, okay, how have things been going? Are the kids doing well, or are they maybe showing that maybe they do need more time with the other parent? I think,
Mhm.
coming into it with the idea and trying to have an open mind, and I think just in general in life, approaching a situation that's occurring, don't always assume the worst of the other person. Don't always assume that the only reason that he's coming to ask for more time is because he wants to pay less in child support. Could very well be the case, and a
Mhm.
lot of times is, but you don't want that to impact the ability that you have to kind of really take that step back and say, okay, do we need to change what
Mhm.
we're doing as far as custody and visitation? Would it be better if the kids did get to spend more time with dad than they've been able to in the past? So I think sitting down, having, kind of that gut check can be really helpful. I think again, also looking at how your kids are doing and really taking stock in that. If they are doing really well, they're, getting really good grades in school, seem to be happy, well adjusted, those types of things. A lot of judges kind of look at these situations and say, well, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Let's not
Mhm.
mess with a good thing that's working. And so don't become overwhelmed with this idea of, oh, they're going to take my kids away and they're going to, change everything. We look at the status quo, and truly, if that status quo is working, I think it's a really hard burden to meet to get a change in time either way. I have discussions with clients who want to reduce the time that the kids are spending with the other parent. And I say, but if the kids are doing okay, I just don't see a court rocking the boat, because we want, again, what's best for the kids and trying to maintain as much continuity as we can,
Mhm.
generally seems to be better for them. So I think just again, keeping in mind, just because he's going to ask for it doesn't mean that it's going to happen. And, maybe there are things that you want changed about the custody schedule. And once we open that opportunity to the court, you have the option of asking for changes as well. So, it can sometimes be a good, touch point to see, do we need to adjust this? Did we set the schedule when our kids were, 1 and 2, and now they're 14 and 15? Like a schedule that works for a 1 and 2-year-old probably is
Yeah, it's pretty
not.
different.
Yeah, it probably is not going to be the best or the most impactful schedule for a 14, 15-year-old. So, change is okay. It's scary, it's terrifying. Nobody likes it, just like nobody likes court, but sometimes change can really help improve things, for everybody involved.
Oh, well, and at the risk of sounding like a bad mother, I would also say that though you may not want it at first, I think there's a lot of empowerment and opportunity that can come from a shared custody arrangement. Not, I mean, I'm not saying that
Mhm.
that's necessarily where you want to start or what you hoped this would look like, but by dad stepping up to the plate, not only can it encourage really positive outcomes for children. You see that in all sorts of studies kind of across the board. But it can be really good for you. And whether you use
Mhm.
that time to be able to work in a job more effectively or, work maybe more full time, which gives you access to healthcare benefits, to retirement, to social security that you've earned on your own, maybe in addition to or instead of any spousal support you might receive as part of your divorce, the opportunity to date, to go out with friends, to check out your own, do your own hobbies. I mean, if you even have those, like what mom like, I don't have any
Right. Yeah,
hobbies.
yeah.
I don't have
My
any
hobby
hobbies.
is getting some sleep. That's
Yeah,
that's
I
what my
know, right?
hobby
But
is right
like,
now in life.
I don't like,
Is
I don't really know about those, because I feel like in so many families, the mom bears the brunt of the child rearing responsibilities. Like for me, I mean,
Mhm.
we're in my kitchen right now because my
Yeah.
daughter's napping because I'm working from home and trying to do it all.
Yeah.
But doing it all is difficult,
Mhm.
and long term, it might have consequences for your career and your satisfaction and your general health. So I mean, I would say too, like, this isn't legal advice so much as personal advice, but I think there is some empowerment and some opportunity that can come from shared custody arrangements, or not even necessarily shared custody, but just from dad taking a more active role and having a little more time on a more regular schedule, even if that's maybe not exactly what you thought it would look like or wanted it to look like. And
Right.
I think if you give it some time and if you try and figure out what those hobbies are, if they exist anymore, you can go back, to old ones, whatever you liked, before all of this, or maybe find some new ones that kind of suit you or meet you where you're at in your life now. Um, I think that will serve you well too. So it's not just a question of a custody arrangement. It's kind of a quest for happiness and you figuring
Mhm.
out how to seek out your own happiness, like in that balance, and how to make it work for your kids because you want healthy, well-adjusted kids, but also for yourself
Yeah.
because you really do have to look out for yourself and take your own health into consideration at all parts of this. Whether,
Absolutely.
yeah, I mean, as a new mom, I'm sure you can relate to feeling like there's not a whole lot of balance
No, no, there is
or
not.
like none.
There is, yeah. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
it's it's hard. And I do think one of the things that you had said, Katie, that I think is really important is that there are so many studies that show if we can have both parents, again, if they are healthy,
yeah,
appropriate parents, we are not saying, if the other side is shooting up drugs all the time in front of the kids, that, well, let them have
yeah,
50-50 because it's good
yeah.
for the kids. Like
No, 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 no,
that's
no.
not that situation. But in general, when we have two healthy, appropriate parents, having both parents as involved as possible really does seem to benefit our kids. And, so we want to try to encourage that. have that happen when it is. There are opportunities available too that may not be available if they weren't spending time with the other parent. I know it's not the same, but I think of opportunities that my kids have had and benefits I've seen in my kids, not so much my 4.5 month old. I mean, she's 4.5 months old, but my almost 4-year-old
But she's
has,
alive. That's a
she
great
is,
benefit.
that is a miracle. You guys. Some days that's like the benchmark of like, have I been successful? Is
It
everybody
is.
alive? All right, we're good.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
we count it as a win and move on to the next day.
Yes.
But my almost 4-year-old has been in daycare since he was 5 months old, and seeing just some of the benefits that he has gotten from that, both socially and academically. And I do think sometimes it makes me as a mom appreciate the time that I get with him more, because I'm not with him 24/7. And so a
Yeah.
little bit of that separation can also make those times with your kids more special, because it's not all the time. And so, trying to think of those positives when you're going through this case, whether again it is an initial determination or a modification.
Hmm.
There are positives that can come from this. Even though again, I wish that I could, in my heart, and my mama bear heart, I wish I could have my kids with me 24/7, but I do know that
But
there
do
are so
you?
many benefits. I mean, today I would say
No,
I
I
do.
know. Yeah.
Again, talk to me after a rough night.
No,
Like if we're going through a sleep regression, maybe I wouldn't, but
yeah,
you
it
know,
ebbs
it
and flows.
it does. It does. And I think, again, looking at it just from that take a step back perspective, I see
Mhm.
those positives. I know for me personally, being able to work and have a job that I
Mhm.
can come to and feel like I'm making a difference and helping people really is what I need.
Yeah.
So I think if we can kind of help focus on those things as well, that can help in these again, incredibly difficult situations that you guys are going through
Mhm.
when custody becomes involved.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no question it's difficult, but I think the good outcome for the kids is, I mean, it's the legal goal. It's there in black and white in the statute in terms of, the
Hmm.
best interest of the child thing. But I know it's your personal goal, as a mother, but it's our goal as lawyers and your goal as a mother to see good outcomes for your kids. But I think it's going to ultimately has good incomes across all areas of your life,
Yeah.
especially, I mean, even in terms of your co-parenting relationship with your child's father. And in a lot of cases, I know moms are always worried, like when these cases go to court, whether for initial termination or a modification, it's like, I'm going to lose custody. And that's the fear.
Hmm.
And most of the time when I see or hear of a mother like legit losing custody, it's because of some real issue like an addiction or mental illness thing, like something like that, or it's a complete failure of co-parenting. So if the court
Yes.
feels like you and your child's father can't talk at all and it's just completely unproductive and it's damaging to the child to witness, that's when I see people lose custody, moms and dads. But moms, of course, are my my priority. That's I only
Right.
represent mothers.
Yes.
But so I mean, I would say, use the time to work on you and use the time to work on your co-parenting relationship and hopefully um, have the benefit of some happy, healthy, well-adjusted kids, and then eventually happy, healthy, well-adjusted grown-ups.
Adults. Yep.
Yeah,
That's the goal,
that's
right?
it's
That's
the
the
goal.
goal.
It's like the one goal. I mean, even though sometimes I'm like, counting down the days, and sometimes I'm like crying because like one day they'll leave
Exactly.
me.
I
It's
know.
like one or the other. It's motherhood's crazy.
I was gonna say, yeah, that's motherhood in a nutshell. It's all over the
It is
place.
so crazy. So I mean, anyway, all that to say, like we completely get it, and
Hmm.
definitely here to help. Thank you again, Caitlin. This was
Yeah.
both fun and informative. So I really appreciate your time. And I thank everyone for tuning in. So if you need more information or have more questions about custody, visitation, divorce, military divorce, or any other family law topics in Virginia, feel free to come check out our website at hoflaw.com. That's HOFLAW.com. We've got books, free reports, resources, blogs, also seminars, all sorts of things. So definitely check it out. And again, thank you for being here. Thank you, Caitlin.